Hey guys, I'm Maddie Lorenzen, and I did the personalization principle for my screencast project. So before I begin, I want to share some personal thoughts. I think this principle is really necessary when it comes to teaching and comprehension because it just really creates a lot of understanding for the students, and it's a great way for teachers to engage the students in what they're actually saying. What is the personalization principle exactly? According to the definition, it states individuals learn better when words are presented in a conversational style, and it's easier to understand than formal language or formal writing. Um, so a main component of the personalization principle is using things like words like we and you, and it makes it easier for students to understand information and retain it. And according to Clark explains that the use of the conversational language, either directly in the program or via an agent, seems to stimulate very ingrained social conventions that lead to deeper learning. And so, according to these, there's an informal example and a formal example. So let's take a look at both of them. The informal says, let's begin by reading page 5 of the textbook. Upon completion of the reading, we'll move on to the next exercise. Although it's a lot longer than the formal example, there's a huge difference. So the formal says, begin the next exercise after page 5 of the textbook has been read. To me, that just sounds kind of awkward, and this one's just more direct and it's just a lot easier to follow. Students' performance. Students perform better when the content's presented in a conversational style over formal style. Formal writing is harder to understand and may add anxiety during tests. So if students don't fully understand what the question is asking because it sounds too formal, they may not be able to exert like the best performance on their test. Whereas if it's more conversational, it's easier to understand and it's just more directed towards the student in a way that they can understand, then they can probably answer the question either faster or more thoroughly. So here are some examples. Example A says the interest is compounded or added to the existing cash balance monthly. For disclosure on client statements, the annual percentage yield earned is calculated as follows. Okay, so that was example A. Example B says clients will often ask you to explain how the annual percentage yield on their statement was calculated. This can be confusing, so let's run through an example. Did you see a difference between the two? I did. Example A was a lot harder to understand than example B. Let's take a look. Example A used jargon such as annual percentage yield, and probably words that a lot of people may not understand unless they're very familiar with what is being said. But example B even addresses that this can be confusing, so let's run through an example. And it's more personalized and addresses the audience. And because example B used the personalization principle, it was a lot more conversational and a lot easier to follow. Of course, you want to use the principle with caution. You want to avoid slang such as OMG or words like that because it just sounds very informal. You also don't want to say like or so unless using them in transitions or comparisons, and really avoid saying I know I'm probably doing that right now during the screencast, but especially in writing, you don't want to sound too informal, and you just want to uphold some professionalism while presenting. And that was my screencast. Thank you for listening.